welcome to the final episode of Top 10 Thursdays on Big Train TV. I'm your host, Alex Strain, and I want to remind you that this week's episode is brought to you by the Dandy Walker Alliance, a proud partner of Big Train Baseball. Visit dandy-walker.org to learn more. This episode looks at game number 1 on our countdown, which means it's the greatest game in Bethesda Big Train history. This game took place on July 28, 2011, and saw the Big Train play the Southern Maryland Nationals in what was the second-to-last game of the 2011 season. That season, of course, saw the Big Train named the best team in all of College Summer League baseball by perfect game. For this episode, we'll be speaking to Big Train manager Sal Colangelo, former Big Train general manager Jordan Henry, as well as former Big Train players Brennan, Middleton, Michael Bass, and Adam Berry. It's an exciting episode, so let's get started. The 2011 Bethesda Big Train season was special from the very beginning. Like other great teams in franchise history, it retained a core group from the preceding season, and the team makeup was one of a squad ready to make a run at the championship from the start.
I think from the very beginning, it was easy to tell that the team was special and incredibly deep. So I remember, and Sal can speak more about this, but I remember every position had multiple players who were great, who could step in a deep pitching rotation, and many guys who went on to the minor leagues and a few to the majors with Hunter and Matt Bowman. So just a great squad, great group of guys. And I think that the team obviously fed off of that. It was contagious on the field, and then the energy in the stadium, fans and the community was contagious as a result of that. And it felt electric at the ballpark.
What I can remember, a bunch of guys coming in from the year before, coming back that were really good ball players. But I do remember one thing more than anything was the rotation and the pitching we had coming in to complement the offense and defense. And then obviously it turned out nicely. There was 3 guys in the rotation that are currently pitching in the big leagues. So clearly that was a good thing, but that was one of the things I remember more than anything.
Sal said, talking about the returning guys, I was a new guy that year and knew once I got there that there had been some people that were coming back. And even though there was a core group apparently that had been there, it didn't feel like that at all. To Adam's point, we all immediately got along great. And that was the first impression of the team. I think through probably the first half of the season, I don't know that any of us knew how well we were doing because we were just having fun and playing ball. So aside from everything did come together on the field, and we obviously had a lot of talent, but I mean, from the team chemistry standpoint, we were just out there having fun, and it kind of turned into something special. It didn't feel like we went into the season with that high of a particular goal.
Mine, that was my second season. I didn't play a ton the first season. I was a freshman and kind of learning the ropes and getting my teeth cut a little bit. So coming back the next year, I expected to play more, but I was sort of wild because that team was better in the first. I could tell in the first couple weeks that they were better than the team I was just playing on, which was my college team. I'm like, holy crap, we got some serious talent here and ability to do something special.
The Big Train had steamrolled through the Cal Ripken League that summer and entered the playoffs as a heavy favorite to win the championship. On that day, July 28, 2011, the team was pitted against the Southern Maryland Nationals, just 2 wins from the CRCBL championship, in a double elimination playoff bracket. The Nationals finished tied for second in the league during the regular season and represented the last major test of the campaign for Bethesda. And so the Big Train turned to starter Martin Agasta in the big situation.
Martin was great. He was one of our best pitchers that year, but really consistent, threw hard. I think he was drafted second round by the San Francisco Giants later that year. But great guy, great competitor, and was a leader on the team throughout the year.
Well, what I remember of Martin, and he was a great kid, was he came in about 86, 88, just threw strikes, but actually came in to develop his craft and get better. And I remember this vaguely, that when he came back and went back to college, and he went right out to the fall, his coach called me and says, "What in the heck is going on?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So he's up to 93, 94, 95 miles an hour. And that was all him because he came down this summer to actually work at his craft and get better. And it could be a mechanical thing, a little thing here and there that changes a lot. But he changed what he did when he came. And we had another guy from St. Mary's, Drew Stratton, there a couple of years ago, same thing. They came in to work, put that extra work in, and it paid off. And I think he got hampered a little bit in pro ball by injuries, but beside that, he was lights out.
Hard fastball, devastating slider that he obviously developed after Big Train was long gone. That allowed him to get to the big leagues. But extremely well polished fastball, devastating slider. He didn't have a lot of control over it all the time, but it moved so much that people at that point in their career were swinging at it, especially if he was ahead in the count. That's what my mind remembers about Martin whenever he was there at the Big Train.
With Augusta cruising through the first 3 innings, Bethesda was able to jump out to an early lead in the bottom of the 2nd inning, with Brennan Middleton and Michael Aldretti delivering RBI singles to put the Big Train up 2-0. Aldretti was a star that summer for the Big Train, playing in both the starting lineup as a hitter as well as serving as the team's closer.
He could play short, he could play second, he could play left, he could throw 90 off the bump, and got everything out of his ability, God-given ability, and was just blessed with some ability. And he played several years. Brendan, you might have played against him some. He was with the Cardinals, I know that, but his dad was a hitting coordinator for the St. Louis Cardinals for years. He knew the game, and he was a guy, like I said, if he wasn't in the lineup, he was on deck, or he's going to pitch that day. He was special.
I mean, I think that versatility is the main thing that comes to mind, which is, you can obviously tell when you see somebody on the offensive and the pitching side of a box score, they've got to be pretty special. But, I mean, I just remember playing in the infield with him, to Sal's point, just knowing everything about the game, knowing exactly somebody that you could rely on. If there was a play that was supposed to be made or somewhere he was supposed to be, he was going to be there. And it was like clockwork. It was never messed up.
Yeah, Mike Aldretti. He was great two-way player. So he played in the field and shortstop. Also played. He was our closer that year and pitched as well as a starter. So he was fantastic. Had a few huge games down the stretch. So that next game as well.
The Nationals answered in the top of the 4th on a pair of RBI singles and a sacrifice fly to give the team a 3-2 lead. They tacked on another in the next inning before the Big Train trimmed the lead to 1 run in the bottom half of the 5th, establishing a topsy-turvy flow to the game. In the bottom of the 6th, Alex Hudak came up with 2 runners on and 2 outs and delivered a massive single to put the Big Train back up 5-4.
And Hudak, he also had a big assist from the outfield. Him and Campos both late in the series where we were throwing runners out left and right from the outfield. And when you needed someone to step up, like you said, a home run, throwing someone out, they did it. Both of those guys, and they were wild.
I think Alex hit for average, he hit for power that summer, and he was a mainstay in left field. I mean, you hit it out there at your mouth, and he's hitting the cutoff every time, preventing guys from extra bases. I mean, he took his defense just as important as his offense in my mind when I think back about his intensity on both sides of the ball. He wasn't a one-dimensional type of guy.
With the Big Train now in the lead and Augusta out of the game, Bethesda was going to need 3 more scoreless innings from their bullpen, a proposition that most observers felt confident about.
Exceptional. That group was stacked. We knew that if Sal and the team got to the end of the game, it was, the door was going to close. It was great starting pitching, but also a great bullpen.
Everybody was so talented to begin with, but also pitched really, really well that summer that they didn't have to go out there and feel like they had to throw 3 or 4 innings. It was like, just by the number of players that you have listed on this box score, I mean, they only had to throw 1 inning. So it's like they were talented, number one, and they didn't have to throw a lot of innings. So they were able to go out there and give it everything they had for the inning or inning and a third or 2 innings that they may or may not have to throw that night. And then they knew that the next guy was going to come right in. So it wasn't like they had to they didn't feel as if they had to bear as much burden, I felt like, because there were so many guys that really pitched really well.
The first two arms to come out of the bullpen were Mike Frank and Mike Kent, who took the mound in the 7th and 8th innings and proceeded to navigate through the difficult Nationals batting order.
And Mike Kent was a right-hander from Clemson who threw the ball very well. I mean, he's just one of the many. Mike Frank, who at one point up until last year, I think he's still coaching in college, but had a great career. It just didn't matter. Or Snyder. They came in and did what they needed to do, throw strikes. They weren't trying to overpower anybody and just let the ball sink and have command 2 or 3 pitches. And they got it. I mean, that pitching staff was loaded, like I said.
The big train went to Aldretti on the mound in the 9th, and though he put 2 runners aboard, he wiggled out of the frame and sealed the deal. A 5-4 big train victory. With that, Bethesda moved into the championship game where they faced the Baltimore Redbirds, and the team and its fan base were filled with confidence.
Seemed really high. I mean, the team was, again, the winning was contagious and just awesome energy. At that point, the team hadn't lost in a while and was cruising, hitting on all cylinders, hitting, pitching, clutch hitting, bullpen, as you mentioned. And so I think very high going into that game.
The big train would defeat the Redbirds and win the 2011 Cal Ripken League Championship, a prize that was sweet on its own. But the ultimate reward came a few days later, as Perfect Game Baseball named the Big Train as its #1 team in all of college summer league baseball for that season, the first and only national championship in franchise history. While the team had known it was a possibility for several weeks, the national rankings were not at the forefront of their minds.
No, we were hanging at number 3 for a while, I believe, with one of the other Cape Cod League teams and another team from the Northwest League. But we were sort of creeping up the rankings. I think at one point in July we were number 6, and then Sal knew that we were sort of on the radar, and then number 3, stayed at number 3 for a while. But the Redbirds were also, I think the Redbirds might have been ranked as well. But we knew that if we were going to finish out the season, not lose, and then with that record, winning the league, that we had a chance at ending up number 1. So it's a surprise when we learned that, but it was we knew it was likely given how amazing that team was.
I don't remember it being known until like the end.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but like I knew we killed it the entire season, but I didn't know it was even a thing. Maybe halfway through the season is when it started to get brought up that this could be a thing. But I don't think that was something we were sitting there talking about all the time. Like, we just went out and played.
Yeah, I feel like it was just one of those things that we, like, I don't think anybody knew when the season started that it was even a thing or there was a possibility. But by the time we got to the playoffs, I think, we knew that we were near the top. But it was more, in my mind, and I don't remember if we talked about it specifically, but it was more like hey, let's see what can happen if we just don't lose.
Yeah.
Like, if we just don't lose, could we make it to the top? I don't know, might as well just win them all and find out. And so that's kind of the, like, mentality of it, and like, why not see what happens kind of thing.
We really didn't talk much about it because it came out later. I knew it was always a possibility and doing something great. But like Michael said, we went out there and that was just the kind of culture that the team established over the year. Whether we're up, down, doesn't matter. We're here to win. And our job, win, get better, and enjoy. And it was epic. We would not lose. No matter what we did, we would not lose.
The national championship cemented the 2011 team's legacy as the greatest in Big Train history. And those who remember it look back and remark on just how special of a team it was to be around that summer, from beginning to end.
Man, that team was just so special. You could tell. It was my 4th year as general manager, and every team at Big Train has been wonderful, a great group of guys that Sal has brought in. But something about that team just felt different from the beginning. It was clicking on all cylinders and just winning at a clip that seemed unsustainable, and then they were sustaining it. And I think just it was so fun to be a part of and bring that energy to the stadium around the team, and it just worked all year and was as good as it gets.
That's it for this week's edition of Top 10 Thursdays, and as a result, for the entirety of this program for the summer. I want to thank everyone who had a hand in both this week's episode as well as the show overall throughout the summer, and of course to all of you for consuming all of our content as the last few months have rolled along. To close things out, we're going to end this episode with a short snippet from a conversation between myself and fellow Big Train intern Sean Salehi about the importance and the legacy of the Bethesda Big Train franchise. If you enjoy the clip, stay tuned for Big Train TV later in the week to see the conversation released in full. Thank you, and enjoy. What do you remember most? What are you going to take away most from this experience with Big Train TV this summer?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think just the fact that everybody was able, within the organization, was able to kind of band together and, you know, put together a product and content for our fans in a season that we thought potentially there would be no content because there was no baseball. And I hope that the fans appreciated all of the hard work that not only people on the Big Train TV side, including you, myself, and Patrick as well, with Stay Safe at Home Tuesdays, but also everybody over at The Beacon, our online publication that went out with several issues and incredible stories. I think just all of the hard work that everybody put in behind the scenes to make this happen in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, if you remember, the pandemic hit, and then a couple months later, we found out there was no season. And then I remember specifically getting a call from our general manager, Chris Rogers, that, hey, we kind of have an idea of maybe doing something in place of the season. And I was all on board for that because I still wanted to have a positive experience to where I could learn something from this. And not only that, but I could still interact with guys that I missed from my time last year, like you and Chris and other people that I've gotten a chance to know through this organization. So I'm really happy with the way that everything turned out, and really proud of the effort and the hard work that everybody put in to make it happen.
Definitely, and I think that also it's been fascinating and illuminating, really, to learn so much about the organization, and that's the part that Big Train TV, I think, has provided to us and as well as the fans that sort of haven't, been around as much. If you're a fan only from a few years ago, you don't know as much about the history in the past, and through the various shows, whether it was with Bruce or Sal or myself, that we've been able to expand more on the past of the Big Train and some of the great players and moments, and also understanding how the organization got to this point, whether it was its time in the Clark Griffith League, the founding of the Cal Ripken League, the rivalry with the Redbirds, all the way up to the present. So it's been very interesting just to learn about the organization more broadly and what it has meant to the fans and the players and everyone involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I will say this. I would have loved to have had this kind of content to fall back on as an incoming broadcaster, because this is important, like you said, that everybody knows kind of the history of this organization that's been around for over 20 years. And hopefully now people who take our places in the future will be able to look back and, have a little history lesson from the two of us.
One in 10,000 children are born with a brain malformation known as Dandy-Walker syndrome. Dandy-Walker can cause enlargement of the skull, lack of muscle control, and other developmental challenges. More research is needed, but we do know that early therapy helps many live healthier, fuller lives. 1 in 10,000 may not seem like a lot unless your child is the one. Learn more, find help, and help others. Visit dandy-walker.org.